Hey Tea Squad, it's your girl Kirsty, and welcome back to Dropping the Tea. Today we're spilling some serious political tea that's got people across the country divided and, in some cases, downright terrified. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order that targets homelessness and mental illness in a way that hasn't been seen in decades. It's called Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets, and depending on who you ask, it's either a bold move to clean up the streets or a dangerous step backward into mass institutionalization and civil rights violations. So what's really in this plan? Who does it affect? And why are mental health advocates, civil rights groups, and even some local governments speaking out? Let's get into it. Here's the tea. In late July, President Trump signed a new executive order with the goal of removing homeless encampments from American cities, especially in places where crime, addiction, and mental illness are on the rise. The plan calls for a nationwide crackdown on behaviors like loitering, public drug use, panhandling, and what it calls urban camping. But here's where it gets even more serious. The order authorizes forced civil commitment for homeless people suffering from mental illness or addiction. Let me say that again. Under this order, someone who is living on the street and deemed mentally unwell can be forcibly institutionalized, even without their consent. The federal government is pushing states and cities to start placing these individuals in long-term care or locked facilities. And if a city doesn't go along with the plan, they could lose out on certain types of federal funding. Trump and his administration say this is about safety. They're framing it as a way to restore law and order, protect businesses, and reduce violent crime. They argue that the current system, which includes harm reduction programs and housing first models, just isn't working. But critics are calling it something else entirely. Groups like the ACLU, disability rights advocates, mental health professionals, and even some former Trump officials are slamming this executive order as dangerous, discriminatory, and unconstitutional. They argue that criminalizing homelessness doesn't solve it, that institutionalizing people against their will, especially those who haven't committed a crime, is a violation of civil liberties. And they're warning that this policy could lead to a return of something many thought was long behind us: large-scale, government-run asylums and long-term psychiatric hospitals with little oversight. So, what's actually changing under this order? First, federal funding is being reallocated. Money that used to go toward harm reduction, mental health outreach, and supervised drug use facilities is now being redirected toward law enforcement and involuntary treatment centers. Second, cities and states are being pressured to clear out homeless encampments, whether or not they have enough shelter beds or affordable housing in place. And third, the Department of Justice is exploring new ways to use civil commitment laws. That means more people could be picked up off the street and placed in institutions for mental illness or addiction, even if they're not a danger to themselves or others. Already, there's been a lot of movement behind the scenes. Earlier this year, over $800 million in grant money was suddenly frozen, only to be partially restored later on. It sent a clear message. Cities that don't cooperate with Trump's plan might be financially punished. The reaction? Immediate and intense. Mental health experts are warning that forced institutionalization doesn't treat the root causes of homelessness, it just hides the problem. Civil rights groups are pointing out that people with disabilities or mental illness are already more likely to be jailed, harmed, or denied treatment, and this order could make that worse. And many unhoused people themselves have said they feel more like political pawns than actual people. One advocate said, "This isn't about care, it's about control." Even some conservatives are worried. While some support a tougher stance on crime, others fear this could be a massive government overreach, and that it opens the door for serious abuse. T-Squad, this one is big, and it's still developing. Whether you see it as a bold solution or a civil rights crisis, Trump's executive order is changing the way America handles homelessness and mental health, and the consequences could be massive. We'll be keeping a close eye on this one. If you've got thoughts, questions, or want to weigh in, you know what to do. Drop a comment, send a message, or tag me with your take. And if this episode got you thinking, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear the tea. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and as always, keep sipping that truth. This has been Dropping the Tea with your girl Kirsty. Catch you in the next episode.